Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
General Hospital spoilers for Friday, November 14th, reveal that Carly Spencer will try an angry arrestment while Sonny Corinthos gets grilled. Rick Lansing will also work on a legal initiative, so let's talk about what's coming up in Port Charles. After Carly gets updates on Lucas Jones' decision to move in Windmere with Marco Rios, she'll surely flip out. Carly will advise that it's not passing and hope to shut down Lucas' plans, but his mind will be made up. Next, Dante Falconeri will speak with Laura Collins now that Rocco Falconeri is set to go before a judge. He should be leaving this courthouse and not coming back, Dante tells Laura in Friday's GH exercise videotape. Dante presently assumes Rocco will get charged with a misdemeanor, but he may have bigger enterprises if commodity changes, and it looks like Rocco could get charged with a felony rather. Still, the limelight could ultimately be on shady Professor Henry Hank Dalton and Rocco's reasons for the lab break heft. Rick might make that part of his legal strategy now that he's stepping up for Sonny to help Rocco out. Jen Sidwell pushed Dalton to back off since they don't need the police scrutiny, but Dalton wants to make Mayor Laura Collins' grandson pay for the way she lowered him. Rick may try to make Dalton look like the shamefaced bone. Then and stir up too important lab interest in the process. Britt's fears will come true ever on Friday's show, so she may have to take matters into her own hands sooner or laterly. There's still a chance Britt might eventually pipe up and say this was all a big misreading. Britt could fluently lie that she forgot commodity in the lab and gave Rocco authorization to use her crucial fob. Since Britt was dealing with Ned Quartermain's exigency, she could use that as part of her reason. Whatever the case, ADA Justine Turner will be taken suddenly over the news that Sonny has hired the half-family he hates. Rick will suppose that should prove to Turner how determined Sonny is to win, so that may go for Rocco's case and the Measure C situation, too. Justine's plans will start to fall piecemeal in further ways than one, so stay tuned to see her coming move. As for Lulu Spencer, she'll put Sonny through a grilling session. Lulu will wonder where a certain idea indeed came from, so she may have questions about the beast testing supposition or maybe express surprise over Sonny hiring Rick away. Sidwell will put on another fascinating act around Ava Jerome, so she'll get pulled further into his crooked web. Across city, Trina Robinson will get in Jordan Ashford's face and advise that she's going to make sure Curtis Ashford no way goes back to her. Trina will want to cover Curtis and Portia Robinson's chance to patch effects up, but there's a lot she doesn't understand about this whole situation. Over with Stella Henry, she'll find out about Portia's gestation and tell Curtis that this baby changes everything. It sounds like Stella will be lodging against Curtis' divorce too, but that's because neither of them will realize Isaiah Gannon is also a father seeker. General Hospital spoilers say Curtis will be in for a rude awakening soon, so stay tuned. Britt Westbourne worked to save arrested Rocco Falconeri while Laura Collins dumped the debate for family drama. In Alexis Davis's office, Molly Lansing Davis gave her the news that they wouldn't have to face off in court. ADA Justine Turner wanted all the glory for herself, so Molly was no longer part of Willow Tate's case. Talk turned to Rick Lansing, so Alexis kept up all her falsehoods about his time down and just hoped Molly wouldn't be dissatisfied by her pater. Again. At Sonny Corinthos' place, Rick made a pitch and tried to bend Sonny on why he'd be a better counsel than Diane Miller on this Measure C situation. Rick allowed. He could make sure Sonny kept his peers no matter what and hoped this could lead to further legal work. Indeed, if it didn't, Rick at least wanted peace between them. Sonny wanted to believe Rick despite their tumultuous history, so Rick pushed him to at least suppose about his offer. A lot ahead of the mayoral debate, Professor Henry Hank Dalton demanded Rocco's arrest for breaking and entering the confined lab. Laura tried to play down Rocco's conduct and refocused the cutlet at Dalton for physically assaulting a minor when he dragged in her grandson. Ezra Boyle brought the police over and escalated the situation. Rocco was set up with the crucial fob on him, so he wound up being read his rights and hauled off in bind. Laura refused to let Rocco go to the police station alone, so she bailed on her debate with Ezra for a family exigency. After Danny Morgan and Charlotte Cassadine explained the rearmost extremity to Britt Westbourne and Jason Morgan, Britt gave Charlotte a lift to GH. Britt intimately searched her bag and realized her missing crucial fob must have been used for the break heft. Once Britt summoned Jen Sidwell, she pushed him to make Dalton back out and played up her own fidelity to the design. Sidwell ultimately met with Dalton alone and advised him to let this go since it would invite the Bobbies to dig into their lab conditioning. Still, Dalton was determined to make Laura pay for demeaning him and planned to do that through her grandson. Meanwhile, Jason took Danny to Alexis' office, where she advised that coming forward wouldn't make effects better for Rocco. It would only make effects worse for Danny, so Jason agreed with Alexis and pushed Danny not to unmask his own involvement to the police. At the sanitarium, Charlotte filled Dante Falconeri and Lulu Spencer in on Rocco's fire. Giovanni Gio Palmieri and Emma Scorpio Drake eavesdropped, so they realized the teens had gone ahead with the break-in plot and ran into trouble. Once Gio and Emma turned to Sonny for help, he set about Rocco's mess. Sonny's phone call eventually intruded Rick's catch-up session with Molly since he'd away for Rick to prove himself. At the PCPD, Harrison Chase introduced himself to Nathan West now that they were mates. Nathan and Chase bandied Judge Eva Heron's case before Dante, Lulu, and Charlotte arrived. Laura also accompanied Rocco and the police officers who brought him in. Lulu and Dante surely weren't happy about the sight of Rocco in bind. Nathan took the bond formerly Rocco once he was in the interrogation room and let him speak with Lulu alone. Lulu got Rocco to recap what happened while Britt showed up at the station next. Nathan suggested Britt should leave since Rocco formerly had his parents there to support him. Dante anticipated Rocco would be charged with a misdemeanor, so Rocco was allowed to go home until he went to court the coming morning. Britt ultimately stepped forward to check on Rocco and tried to be reassuring. General Hospital spoilers say some twists and turns are still to come in Rocco's case, so we'll bring you updates on his court outgrowth. The fluorescent lights of General Hospital's critical care unit hummed a sterile, monotonous dirge, a sound that had become the soundtrack to the Quartermain family's collective nightmare. Around Ned's still form, a vigil was held, each member grappling with the void left by his sudden silence. The vibrant, sometimes pompous, heart of their family had been stilled by a catastrophic cardiac event, and the medical uncertainty was a heavy shroud over the room. Tracy Quartermain, her usual acerbic demeanor sanded away by fear, held her son's limp hand, her knuckles white. Lois Cerullo, a tempest of emotion barely contained by designer black, paced the small space, her tears a quiet, constant stream. Beside her, Olivia Quartermain stood as a pillar of quiet strength, her own complicated history with Ned set aside in the face of a more profound love and fear. And then there was Brook Lynn. Ned's little girl even now as a grown woman. She stood slightly apart, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if holding her own breaking pieces together. The memory of their last conversation played on a cruel loop in her mind, a petty argument about her music career, his cautious advice she had dismissed as controlling, her sharp words thrown back in his face. The regret was a physical ache, a cold stone in her gut. "Don't you leave me, Daddy," she whispered into the antiseptic air, a prayer sent to any power that might be listening. "Not like this. Not before I can make it right." The door to the room whispered open, and Dr. Terry Arnett entered, her expression professionally neutral but her eyes soft with compassion. "His condition is stable, but it's critical," she began, her gaze sweeping over the assembled family. "We've managed the immediate crisis, but he's lost a significant amount of blood. He needs a transfusion, and we're facing a complication. Ned has a rare blood type, B negative, and our hospital supply is dangerously low. We've put out a call to the regional blood bank, but time is a factor we may not have." A stunned silence met her words. The Quartermains, for all their wealth and influence, could not buy what was most needed, a simple, life-giving match. Brook Lynn didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, rolling up the sleeve of her blouse with a determination that brooked no argument. "Take mine," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Test me. Whatever you need. I'm his daughter. My blood is his blood." It was a statement made with the unshakable certainty of a lifetime. She had his smile, she'd been told. His stubborn chin. The shared love of a perfectly played piano concerto. The blood that ran in her veins was his legacy, a biological truth as fundamental as her own name. Tracy and Lois exchanged a look, a fleeting, unreadable flicker of something that, in Brook Lynn's single-minded focus, she completely missed. Dr. Arnett nodded. That's our best hope. Let's get you typed and cross-matched immediately. The journey from the emotional intensity of the ICU to the clinical calm of the phlebotomy lab was a disorienting shift. As a technician tied a tourniquet around her arm and swabbed her skin with cold alcohol, Brook Lynn focused on the encouraging words she would say to her father when he woke up. She would tell him she was sorry. She would tell him he was right. She would promise to be better, to listen more, to make him proud. This act, this simple donation, was the first step in her atonement. The initial pinprick was nothing. She watched with a sense of profound purpose as the dark crimson filled the vial. This was her proof. Her love, made tangible, would course through his veins and bring him back to her. Hours later, the wait had become its own form of torture. The family had been shuffled to a private waiting room, where the air was thick with unspoken anxieties and the scent of stale coffee. Brook Lynn sat with a blanket around her shoulders, though she wasn't cold. It was a gesture of comfort, a poor substitute for the certainty she craved. When Dr. Arnett reappeared, her neutral mask had slipped. Her brow was furrowed, and she held a digital tablet in her hand, her grip tight. Her eyes scanned the room and landed squarely on Brook Lynn. Brook Lynn, could I speak with you for a moment? In private? The request, delivered in a tone that was a careful blend of professionalism and profound discomfort, sent a jolt of ice through Brook Lynn's veins. This wasn't the update she was expecting. This wasn't, the transfusion was a success. This was something else. Something wrong. Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of my family, Brook Lynn insisted, her heart beginning to hammer against her ribs. Her grandmother, Tracy, reached out and placed a steadying hand on her granddaughter's arm, a gesture that now felt less like support and more like restraint. Dr. Arnett took a deep breath. The transfusion was not possible, she said, her words measured and precise. The initial blood typing revealed an incompatibility. Brook Lynn, your blood type is AB positive. She paused, letting the clinical fact hang in the air. Brook Lynn stared, uncomprehending. So? What does that matter? Just give him the blood. It matters a great deal, Dr. Arnett continued gently, her gaze filled with a pity that was terrifying. For a child to be AB positive, one parent must have either A or AB blood, and the other must have B or AB. A parent with B negative blood, like Ned, simply cannot be the biological father of a child with AB positive blood. It's a genetic impossibility. The world did not so much shatter as it simply dissolved. The hum of the lights, the concerned faces of her family, the very ground beneath her feet, it all receded into a distant, muffled roar. The encouraging words she had rehearsed for her father evaporated from her mind, replaced by a single, screaming, silent question. If not him, then who? She looked from Dr. Arnett's compassionate face to her grandmother's, which was now a mask of grim, pained acceptance. To Lois's, which was crumpled in fresh, guilty sobs. To Olivia's, which held only a deep, aching sorrow for her. The angry threats began not from Brook Lynn's lips, but in her heart. A storm of betrayal, confusion, and a rage so pure it was blinding. You knew, Brook Lynn whispered, the words scraping from her throat. She rose to her feet, the blanket falling away. You all knew. Tracy was the first to speak, her voice aged a decade in a moment. Brook Lynn, darling, please. Let us explain. This is not how you were ever supposed to find out. Find out what? Brook Lynn's voice rose, sharp and brittle as broken glass. That my entire life is a lie? That the man I called my father for 30 years isn't? What grand explanation could you possibly have, grandmother? Was it all just one big, convenient secret to keep the great Quartermain name untarnished? Lois rushed forward, her hands fluttering, desperate to connect. No. Baby, no. It wasn't like that. Ned. Ned is your father in every way that matters. He chose you. He loved you from the moment he held you. But he didn't make me. Brook Lynn shot back, tears of fury now streaming down her face. Who did? Who was my biological father? One of Mom's flings from the road? Some anonymous donor? Tell me. The private waiting room was no longer private. The raised voices had drawn attention, and the Quartermain family's most intimate crisis was spilling into the public corridor. The angry threats were no longer internal. I have a right to know. Brook Lynn yelled, her finger jabbing accusingly at the women who had raised her. You had no right to keep this from me. You let me go my whole life believing a fairy tale. You let me walk in here today thinking I could save him, thinking we shared something real. And it was all a lie. She turned on Tracy, the architect of so many family secrets. All those times you told me I had the Quartermain spirit, the Quartermain backbone. Was that a lie, too? Am I even a Quartermain at all? You are my granddaughter, Tracy said, her own voice trembling with a rare show of raw emotion. That is the only truth that has ever mattered. It's not enough. Brook Lynn cried. It's not enough anymore. She looked at Ned, still and unknowing in his bed, the man at the center of this cataclysm. The love was still there, a deep, ingrained current beneath the tsunami of betrayal. But it was now tangled with a profound sense of loss. She was grieving for him, for the relationship she thought they had, for the very foundation of her own identity. Spinning on her heel, she fled the room, pushing past a concerned Monica Quartermain and a stunned Drew Kane who had arrived for the vigil. She couldn't bear their pitying looks, their unasked questions. The hallway stretched before her, a long, sterile tunnel with no end in sight. The fallout was immediate and radioactive. The news, as it always did in Port Charles, spread like a virus through the hospital's gossip network. Whispers followed Brook Lynn as she stumbled through the corridors, a ghost of her former self. Back in the waiting room, the remaining family turned on itself, the fragile truce shattered. This is your fault, Lois. Tracy accused, her fear and guilt morphing into venom. Your chaotic life, your indiscretions. We never should have allowed this charade to continue for so long. My fault? Lois fired back, her grief making her reckless. You were the one who was so terrified of scandal. You and Edward. You thought it was better to have Ned raise another man's child than to have the world know his wife had a past. You forced this lie. Olivia stepped between them, her voice a plea for sanity. Stop it. Both of you. This isn't about whose fault it is. This is about Brook Lynn. She is hurting and confused, and she needs us now more than ever. And Ned, her voice broke as she looked toward his room. Ned would be devastated to know this came out like this. He loved her. He loves her. That was never a lie. But the genie could not be put back in the bottle. The question now hung over the family, a specter more threatening than any business rival or legal trouble. Who was Brook Lynn's biological father? Lois, cornered and heartbroken, finally crumbled under the weight of the secret she had carried for decades. She sank into a chair, her face in her hands. It was a mistake, she sobbed. One stupid, lonely mistake on the road, right before Ned and I got back together for good. I never thought. I never knew. I was sure Ned was the father. I had to be.